And that's a great Henry Hill moment. Actually, that puts a good star on him right there. Actually, I like that. That's probably one of the best things I've ever heard about Henry right there. I like that. Let me ask you something. Has every book mob wise that you put out, has the person switched over to the other side?
No. I've written the most recent one is called A Family Business. It's about a New York guy named Joe Silvestri. Joey is old school. He believes anything you know about the mob, you take to the grave with you. It doesn't matter what they do to you. It doesn't matter if you've fallen out of grace with them and they're going to whack you. None of that matters. You never tell the cops anything, period. And he firmly believes that. Joe's in his, I think, mid-80s now, and a great guy, Joey is. And I thought we might have issues because when I started working with him, some of the other books I had were from guys who had turned witness. And with Joe's attitude, I didn't know, whether, but Joey and I are great friends. We get along fine. And Joe wasn't a guy who I never worked with on a book, but who I was friends with, who passed away a couple of years ago, was Tony Napoli. He was associated with the Genovese family. And his father was Jimmy Knapp. And Jimmy Knapp had been a highly respected mobster, and he ran not just for the Genovese family. At one point, he was in charge with the illegal gambling for the 5 families. Now, where are you going to find a guy that all the families would trust to have that kind of clout? But Jimmy Knapp was that guy. And so, but Tony introduced me to Joe Silvestri. They were buddies. And Tony shared the same philosophy as Joey. You never talk. You never become a rat or an informant. And if you got to take it to the grave with you, if they whack you, that's just the way it is. So these guys that I've dealt with, some of them live by different rules and they have different thoughts. Yeah,
definitely. Do you know anything on the Hoffa situation?
It's funny. A few years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago, I talked to a guy. Guy contacted me online, and he said he'd been the chauffeur at one point for Hoffa briefly. And he said he knew that Hoffa was buried. He knew for sure. The remains were in the shopping mall in Detroit, in the under the parking garage, in a position they could never be excavated. They'd have to tear down half of Detroit to be able to take down these pillars and blah blah blah. And he swore. Now, can he prove it? He had some information that he told me, but nothing I could verify. So he made a good case, but whether he was telling the truth or not, or whether he was just looking for some publicity, I don't know. But yeah. But that was his story.
I can't think of that guy's name, but I'm pretty sure that's the same guy. Denny said he worked at the Copa, and then they give him, all of a sudden he becomes Hoffa's driver. And that I'm pretty sure I know the guy you're talking about. I heard that story and that. But I'm from Detroit, and I know that anywhere we possibly think it is, we go dig it up. So even if it was in the corner of that building that half the city had to come down, they would have already dug that up just to look. They're never going to stop digging for that guy. That's like I don't know. It's like an annual thing. Every 10 years, it feels like we're going to go dig somewhere for him.
Another Hoffa sighting or another Hoffa possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, several people like to get on their deathbeds and confess to a lot of things they didn't do. You know what I mean? Like Frank Sharon, he realized he didn't have any money at the end and wanted to put out a book and just threw all kinds of stuff in there, from the Gallo to the Hoffa thing. And I mean, just knew that he was going to be passing away soon, and he wouldn't have to argue any of it with anybody. the whole Frank Culata situation only lasts a couple years in Vegas, right? It's like 79 to 83 and it's all over.
Yeah, Frank got there, I think it was May of 79. Now, Frank was in prison when Spilatro moved to Vegas in 71. Uh, then Frank got out, and Tony made him a couple of offers to come to Vegas earlier. And Frank said, no, he said, I'm opening up a restaurant here, or, a bar. He said, and I'm going to try to go to legit. Well, we know that didn't last all that long. Frank was getting in hot water in Chicago, and Tony was needing help. He was needing more muscle. He was expanding operations and clout in not only Vegas, but he was reaching into Southern California and Arizona. So uh, Tony wanted Frank to come out. The bosses in Chicago said it was probably a good idea. So Frank ended up relocating from Chicago to Vegas and joined Tony. But he got there in 79. And then in 82 is when he ended up flipping. So yeah, it was only about a three-year deal for him and the Vegas piece of it.
Yes, because David, he starts hanging out with him when he's like 19. I mean, as I told him, I said, you were a very ballsy 19-year-old at that time because you knew Tony. By the time Frank got to Vegas, I think Tony was already suspect on like 12 murders.
Yeah, Tony. And I think, the counts vary for Tony, but I read up that by the time it was over with, he was a suspect in up to 24 or 25. I mean, he was, he was certainly a suspect in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because David's run with them is only like 16 months, I think. And I'm like, and then you rob them, and you don't just hide on the other side of the map. You keep coming back and forth in that. I said, you were a very, very ballsy. In no way I believe he was afraid of any of them, definitely. That's what I'm like, you were just as crazy as them at the time. You should have walked away from it, you know what I mean? Because you got burned when you decided you wanted to be a good Samaritan. But I said, you were definitely just as crazy as that whole group was. I said, you were just as crazy as Lurch Newman.
Funny, but that was what how Frank described Newman too. He ballsy.
Oh, no, yeah.
Or described David. Yeah, he said he's a very ballsy. He was a very ballsy kid.
He seemed ballsy. I mean, and well, he still seems a little ornery right now. But I said, to be young and all them adults, and like you didn't hear Tony's name on the news, papers, everything. You knew exactly what you were into, and literally you knew at any moment they could kill you. But evidently you were not worried about any of that. I said, whoa, it's just his story is very crazy. And it's got just so many spins on it. And I told him, I said, it's a little bit of karma. You kind of put your nose in that business and you got burned on both ends. The police burned you. You know what I mean? I said, you definitely, that was a lesson right there. Mind your own business. Don't jump into things and attempt to get anybody tied in anything. Just mind your own business sometimes.
Yeah, David ended up in kind of a no man's land there between both sides, and it made it very difficult, like a no-win situation for him.
Yes, it did. But I mean, you twisted you tell the story real good. So the book is definitely interesting. I definitely love it. I had to get 2 copies from David. That way, I'm going to raffle one off to somebody and let them get in it. I believe I love books. I love getting them signed by the author. I love it. I love true crime. That's all I can read is true crime. I can't read any sort of other book. I don't know what it is. I just can't get into it. I love true crime. I always have been into true crime. And finally, when podcasts like right now started getting crazy, that's why I totally was like, now is my time. All this reading and paying attention I've been doing is going to pay off right now. Definitely.
And for whatever the reason, the interest in true crime and organized crime really stays constant. I mean, it isn't like a flash in the pan. If years and years, people back to the old days and all the way up through, and they still can't get enough. They love these true crime and organized crime stories.
I think we all love it. Everybody loves it because we all see ourselves in a tiny piece of it. Everybody wants to be that badass guy for a minute. Some people take the plunge and be that badass guy, but then everybody at the end turns back to that normal person again. Literally, like, no, I just want to live a normal life. Like Frank, look, his life turned out better than it would have if he would have kept all the crime. He probably had more money at the end, everything. So David kind of saved him, you know what I mean? Definitely. But everybody at the end turns back to a normal person. Look at all the people who kill, do all that at the end. They're like, oh, I just want to help people. I want to stop people from getting into that. All the good Samaritan stuff. I'm like, you were good in the beginning. You just were actually acting like somebody else, trying to be two people.
Exactly. And I almost every interview I do, I'm asked what you just mentioned about, what drives people for their interest in organized crime and so forth. And I totally agree with you that one of the reasons, there may be more, but one of them is this: for the average Joe, Joe Sixpack, would just like for that fleeting moment to be the tough guy, be the guy that gets, you know, the guy that offends him at work, or the guy that's monkeys with his girlfriend or his wife, whatever, and administer justice. Just briefly, they a little fantasizing about what it would be like to do that, and then they return. They would never maybe do, but they did return to their normal life and punching the time clock every day and going about their business. But uh, it's kind of an opportunity to think what it might be like to be that other guy.
Yeah, it's to be the John Gotti, to be the man's man. You know what I mean? To have all that. Yes, it's very intriguing, but it ends. You know what I mean? They all end the same way. What ends two ways? It ends the John Gotti way, or you're gonna tell your story to the police, and right there. There's only two ways that ends. But true crime is amazing. We fall. Everybody loves a gangster. Everybody.
Yeah.
Even from church people to everything. Everybody loves a gangster. Now, getting tied in with them or this, that, and this, but everybody loves a gangster. Honestly, because there's some very friendly gentleman people. Honestly, because there actually are good people. They just, you know what I mean? They've signed up for a job and they have to do it.
Fred, something, jumping back for a minute, a little bit ago, you mentioned about Henry Hill and his paintings and how they've, since he passed, the price of them is going out of sight. You just reminded me, I got 3 signed Henry Hill paintings in my closet back in New York. I'm going to have to check into them and see what eBay might have to offer there, huh?
Well, listen, what I think is you actually have 2 Henry Hill paintings autographed, and hopefully I will soon be the owner of 1 Henry Hill autographed painting. That's how I hope that works out right there. Because yes, I would love to own a piece of Henry's work. Definitely.
I will check. I will check when I get back to New York. I'm heading back. Finally, my wife and I got our COVID shots and all that stuff, and we've got clearance to travel. So May 6th, we're heading back to New York. So after I get back there, I'll get in touch with you and let you know what I find in my closet for an inventory.
Awesome. I will owe you a favor.
Sure.
A legal one. A legal favor.
Okay. Fair enough.
How long were you in Las Vegas?
19 years.
19 years. So you've seen, heard, and literally a lot.
Yes.
And you're not only into true crime gangster stuff, right?
I'm into a lot of things, actually. Yeah.
Bikers.
Yeah, the biker story kind of fizzled when the individual had some health issues and various problems, personal issues. So that's kind of on hold at the moment. We started that, but it's right now on hold. Another book that I had problems with. Did you ever hear of? Do you ever follow boxing at all?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Did you ever hear of Vinny Curto? He was a cruiserweight champion. I forget the year, but he won the cruiserweight championship, and he was a mob affiliate or associate.
No, I'm not
And
familiar with
enforced.
that, but I want to be familiar.
We did his book. In fact, the book is titled Survival, and the purpose behind the book was Vinny was an abused child. He was his father and his father's friend sexually abused him as a kid. So the book was basically to encourage kids who are the victims of sexual abuse that they don't have to take it, that they need to tell people, they need to expose their abusers, whether they tell their school teacher, they tell the police, they tell the guidance counselor, whatever it is that they need to expose it. And Vinny tells how he overcame that sexual abuse and went on to become a world champion. So it's quite a story, but the focus of it, or the purpose, the intent, was to bring out the issue of sexual abuse of children. And it's it's a shame there, because I really enjoyed the book. It's some great stories in it, all corroborated. I mean, you can go to the boxing records and stuff, and all the fights are there, and the results. I mean, it can be verified. And Vinny ended up with some personal issues, and after we got the book out, he kind of disappeared, and we never promoted it. I mean, I needed Vinny to promote. I needed Vinny out there doing interviews and stuff, and that just never came about. So that book never got out there like it should have gotten out there. But that's one, and that's there's an organized crime element to that. Okay, because Sammy the Bull Gravano, in fact, was going to kill Vinny at one point. So there is an organized crime piece to it, but that's not the focus of the book. And then I've gotten into some issues about cold cases and botched police investigations. Not organized crime necessarily hits, but murders and suspicious deaths that were not adequately investigated, and police may have dropped the ball.
I love a good cold case. I love a good cold case.
You may have read my book. Well, I say it's my book. My name's on it, but it's an anthology. I did not write the book. I organized it and so forth. But there's stories. I think there's 19 in this particular book. Its title of it is Survivors, Survivors, and it's by the Transparency Project and me. So my name shows up on the cover as an author, and those are 19 or whatever, 20, whatever number it is, stories of murder and suspicious deaths that cases went cold or were never fully or properly investigated. And a lot of them are heart-wrenching, what these survivors have gone through, because what happens is they first of all suffer the loss of their loved one. In a lot of cases, it's a brother, it's a sister, it's a daughter, it's a parent. And then when they try to get answers, when they try to get, I was scolded for calling it closure. These people said there's never closure, but they might get resolution. They might find out who did it and get some accountability. And when they try to deal with the system and they question the authorities, well, how come you never interviewed so-and-so? How come you never talked to this one? How come you didn't check this? How come you didn't do that? And the police refuse to talk to them. They refuse to provide any information. And when the people try to get reports and submit a FOIA request, they're told, well, this is an open case. We're exempt from FOIA. We don't have to give you anything. It's very frustrating. So they get victimized twice. They get victimized first by the loss of their loved one, then second by the system that they count on for help. And it's just a very frustrating situation. And some of those cases make you almost want to cry, when you see what happens to people. So it's I'm into that also now, in addition to the organized crime stuff.
Definitely, I feel you on that end, because my brother was murdered. I got in an argument with my father one time. Later that day, he fell down the stairs and died. And I've been with my mother kidnapped before while I was locked in a truck and my mother was taken out and raped. So I definitely had a spin of a little tragedy before. And I happen to be the last one left of my family right now. My mother, brother, and father are all gone. I'm the last one.
Oh.
Yep, definitely. The world spins. No matter how still you stand, it keeps spinning.
Yeah, it never stops, that's for sure.
Definitely. Well, I definitely am not going to hold you up all day. I definitely want to thank you. Thank you so much for the time and the great conversation. This definitely was an honor to have you on. I love your books. I'm actually friends with, a couple of the people you've done the books for. I love it. I love your work. I love everything you're doing. You're a great person.
Thank you very much, Fred, and I appreciate this, and I'll keep in touch with you, and I'll let you know what I find regarding Henry.
Oh, yes, definitely keep in touch, and let's definitely do a part 2 to this. Let me find some more good stuff to pick out of that brain of yours.
Okay, fair enough, Fred. You have a great day.
You have a great day, too. Thank you, Denny.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.